Welcome to Pillow Talk Dreams, where every night becomes a story and every story leads you to peace. If you love calm voices, gentle journeys, and stories that help you drift into dreams, then don't forget to subscribe and let your nights be a little softer. Now close your eyes and let the story begin. Books were covered in dust, their spines faded and cracked, but one caught his attention. It wasn't a book he remembered. A small, leather-bound journal lay wedged between the others, tied with a thin red ribbon. He reached for it carefully. The cover was worn but soft, the color of aged rosewood. When he untied the ribbon and opened it, the scent of lavender drifted out faint but unmistakable. It was her handwriting. June 4th, 1908, the lake is quiet today. Thomas says it feels alive, that it listens when we speak. I don't know if that's true, but when I look into the water, I see our reflections and I think maybe he's right. He smiled faintly. Her voice came alive in his mind, gentle, curious, endlessly warm. He turned the page. June 10th, we spent the afternoon by the willow tree. He told me stories about the stars and said he wished time could freeze just for a moment. I laughed and told him it already had right here with us. Thomas exhaled slowly, feeling his chest tighten with a mix of joy and ache. He kept reading. July 21st, I think I am falling in love with him. Not the kind of love people write about, not wild or loud, but the kind that feels like coming home. I hope the lake remembers this feeling, even when we are gone. The fire crackled softly in the hearth. Each page was a piece of time, moments preserved like pressed flowers, untouched and waiting for him to return. He read until his eyes grew tired, until the candle beside him melted low. Then, near the end of the journal, he found something that made his breath falter. October 3rd, Thomas leaves tomorrow. The war has called him away. I told him I would wait, but he made me promise not to. He said life is too uncertain to tie down with promises. Still, I will wait, even if I never tell him. If he ever returns, I hope he finds the box under the willow. It's not much, but maybe it will remind him that love is not bound by time. He closed the journal slowly, his hand trembling slightly. The flames flickered, casting soft light across the room. Outside, snowflakes drifted against the glass, melting into tiny streams that caught the moonlight. He sat there for hours, quiet, still, surrounded by the ghosts of words and the warmth of memory. Then something inside him shifted, not sorrow, not regret, but peace. He realized she had never truly left. She had lived on in the lake, in the letters, in the quiet spaces between his own heartbeats. He placed the journal beside the box and looked toward the window. The lake was no longer just water and ice. It was her reflection, her voice, her promise kept through time. As he drifted toward sleep, the house seemed to hum softly, the sound of the fire, the wind, and something deeper, a love that had found its way home at last. Crescent moon to be continued. Morning came softly, wrapped in silver mist. The lake lay still, a perfect mirror reflecting the pale sky, as if guarding the secrets of the night before. Thomas woke in his chair, the old journal still resting against his chest. The fire had gone out, but the warmth in his heart lingered. He could still hear her words in the quiet, "I hope the lake remembers this feeling." He smiled faintly. It did, and so did he. He rose slowly, the weight of years pressing on his shoulders, but his spirit lighter somehow, as though time itself had softened. He made tea and sat by the window again, the steam curling upward like a small prayer. The house was silent except for the ticking of the old clock, steady and patient. He opened the journal once more, turning to the last blank page. He hesitated, then reached for a fountain pen that lay nearby, a relic from his youth. And there, in the same flowing script that time had not forgotten, he began to write. My dearest Alina, it has been so long since I heard your voice, yet tonight I swear I did. The snow whispered it to me, the wind carried it across the lake. I found your journal, your words, the fragments of our love preserved like petals pressed between time. I thought love was something that faded, that distance and age could erase. But I see now that love is not bound to years or bodies. It lingers like sunlight on the water, refusing to vanish. You said once that the lake listens when we speak. I think it still does. Perhaps it will carry these words to you wherever you are. He paused, watching his breath mist against the cold air. The quiet of the room felt wholly sacred, as though it too were listening. He continued to write. I came back to the house to forget, but I found you instead. Not in the walls or in the things you left behind, but in the silence. In the way the wind sighs through the trees, in the scent of lavender, in the rhythm of the waves. You are everywhere, Alina. You always were. If love is truly timeless, then let this letter be our reunion, not an ending but a beginning in another place, another sky. He signed his name quietly. Thomas, when he finished, he folded the letter and placed it inside the locket's box. Then, with careful steps, he put on his coat and stepped outside. The cold met him like an old friend. Snow crunched underfoot as he walked toward the willow tree, the same one that had watched over them all those years ago. Its branches bowed gently under the weight of snow, as if remembering. He knelt at its roots, brushing away the frost until the earth showed beneath. There he buried the box again, the locket, the letter, and her journal resting together. He whispered, Now you can rest, my love. The lake will keep your secret safe. The wind stirred softly, wrapping around him like an embrace. For a moment he thought he heard her, not in words but in feeling, a warmth, deep and tender, blooming in the cold. He stayed there for a long time, until the snow began to fall again, slow, peaceful, eternal. Then he rose and turned back toward the house. As he reached the porch, something caught his eye, a faint glimmer by the window. He stepped closer, and there, on the frosted glass, the condensation had formed a single shape, a heart. He smiled through his tears. Maybe it was chance. Maybe it was the lake, or maybe, just maybe, it was her. He opened the door, stepped inside, and let the warmth of memory fill the room. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. That night, he slept by the window with the stars above and the lake whispering below. And when morning came, the house by the lake stood quietly in the sunlight, timeless, gentle, and full of love that never left. Crescent Moon to be continued. The final part will close the story with a deeply emotional, poetic ending, where the house becomes a symbol of eternal love, and Thomas finds peace at last. The dawn came quietly that morning, soft and silver, like the breath of a dream not yet ready to fade. The lake lay calm beneath a veil of mist, its surface so still that the world above seemed mirrored in the water, sky, and earth folded gently into one. The house, weathered and beautiful in its age, stood wrapped in silence. The wooden beams creaked softly as if whispering to one another, remembering every laughter, every tear, every night that had ever breathed within its walls. Inside, Thomas sat by the window, wrapped in his shawl. The fire had long since died, leaving behind faint spirals of smoke and the scent of ash. Yet warmth lingered not from the hearth, but from something quieter, deeper. He gazed out at the lake, the same view he had watched countless mornings before, but today felt different. The air shimmered with a kind of peace, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for him to speak one last time. He smiled faintly, his eyes gentle. "Good morning, Alina," he whispered, as he often did. "The light looks just the way you loved it." A soft wind stirred the curtains. The sound was so delicate it felt like an answer. Thomas closed his eyes for a moment and let the sound wash over him. He could almost hear her footsteps again, the soft rustle of her dress, the quiet laughter she left behind wherever she went. He reached for the old journal resting beside him, the one filled with her handwriting, each word like a small heartbeat left on paper. He traced the ink with trembling fingers, as if touching her hand through time. "You always wrote about peace," he murmured, "but I think I only understand it now." The day drifted slowly, the kind of day that feels endless and tender. The sunlight moved across the room like a living thing, warming the floorboards, brushing over the piano where dust shimmered like snow. He rose from his chair, each step deliberate, calm. There was no hurry now, not for anything. He poured himself tea, its faint aroma filling the room, a mixture of mint and lavender, her favorite. He took a sip, closed his eyes, and for a moment he could almost taste summer again, the garden blooming outside, her laughter floating across the water. "You would have loved this morning," he said quietly. "The way the mist curls around the trees, the way the lake holds the light like a secret." He smiled again. "I suppose the lake always knew us best." Outside, a few snowflakes began to fall, slow, gentle, as if the sky itself didn't want to wake the earth. Thomas stood by the window, watching them drift downward and disappear into the lake's silver surface. He had always loved the sound of snowfall, soft, almost like breathing. The world became smaller, quieter, closer to heaven. He returned to his chair, set the teacup aside, and drew out a single sheet of paper. He dipped his pen into ink and began to write slowly, carefully, like he was writing to eternity itself. "My beloved," he began, "this house still remembers you. Every wall, every floorboard, every quiet moment between heartbeats. It has held on to your laughter longer than I ever could. Even when I left, even when years passed and the world changed, it waited patiently for us to return." The ink glistened as it dried, the words glowing in the dim light like tiny stars. "I used to think time would make me forget," he continued, "but time only made your memory gentler. You became the hush between words, the warmth in the cold, the echo that answers when I whisper your name." A tear slipped quietly down his cheek, but it wasn't sadness, it was release. He laid the pen down, folded the letter with care, and slipped it into the old wooden box that had once held her locket. Then he rose again, and for the first time in years, he put on his coat and hat, the same ones he wore the last night he saw her. He stepped outside, his boots sinking into the fresh snow. The air smelled of pine and distant rain. The lake waited before him, vast and shining. Each step toward it felt lighter than the last, as though the ground itself was lifting him. He reached the end of the dock. The water shimmered softly, rippling like glass kissed by wind. He looked up at the sky, a pale winter blue, full of light and promise. "I'm here, Alina," he whispered, "and I think it's time." A stillness fell, not empty but full, the kind of silence that holds the sound of everything that has ever been loved. He sat down at the edge of the dock, his feet just above the water, and let the quiet embrace him. The lake murmured softly against the wood like it was speaking a language only he could understand. He took a deep breath, and another. "If love is eternal," he whispered, "then we never truly said goodbye, did we?" He closed his eyes. The wind moved gently through his hair, and in its whisper he heard her again. "No, my love," the voice said, soft as sleep. "We never did." He smiled. The snow fell thicker now, covering the dock, the water, the old footprints that led back to the house. And when the evening light came, painting the lake gold and rose, Thomas did not move again. He looked peaceful, his face turned toward the horizon, a faint smile on his lips. The wind quieted. The world held him in its arms. That night the villagers saw something rare. The lake glowed faintly beneath the moon, not in reflection, but from within, as if lit by 1,000 hidden candles. And if one listened closely, through the hush of snow and the sigh of wind, you could almost hear two voices, soft, laughing, whispering love across the water. The house by the lake stood still and silent, yet somehow alive. The curtains swayed gently, though no window was open. The fire burned low, though no one had lit it. And sometimes, when dawn arrived and mist kissed the water, the shadows on the dock seemed doubled, two figures sitting side by side, their hands almost touching, watching the sunrise together. The lake, they said, remembers love. It holds it, shelters it, and keeps it safe beneath the silver calm. And so it did, forever. Crescent Moon the end, the house by the lake, and now, as the story of the house by the lake comes to an end, I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Let it flow in and out, just like the quiet rhythm of the lake itself. Because even though Thomas's story may have faded into the stillness of night, his peace, his love remains here with you. In this very moment, in the calm that now surrounds you. The house by the lake was never just a place. It was a memory, a heartbeat in time, a gentle reminder that love in all its forms never truly disappears. It becomes the whisper of the wind, the reflection on the water, the warmth that lives quietly in your chest even when the world feels cold. So as you lie there now, listening to the soft sounds around you, the hum of the night, the quiet rhythm of your own breathing, allow yourself to feel safe. You've walked through this story, through love and memory and time, and you've arrived at stillness, a beautiful, sacred kind of peace. Maybe tonight your mind will wander to a place of your own, a small house by a quiet lake, where the air smells of pine and rain, and the world slows down enough for you to breathe again. Maybe you'll hear the soft creak of wooden floors beneath your feet, the sound of a fire whispering in the corner, or the hush of the wind brushing gently against the window. And maybe you'll feel what Thomas felt, the weight of the past finally lifting, the warmth of love that never truly leaves. In that quiet space, you'll find rest. And in that rest, you'll find healing. Because that's what stories are meant to do, not just to be heard, but to hold you, to remind you that peace still exists even in the quietest corners of the world. If your eyes are still open, let them close now. Let your thoughts slow down, each one fading like footprints in soft snow. You don't have to think anymore. You don't have to do anything. Just be here, safe and calm, wrapped in this soft, endless night. The stars above you have seen countless love stories. Some ended in forever, and some, like Thomas and Alina's, found their forever beyond time itself. But tonight, their love is part of your dreams now, a gentle light guiding you deeper into rest. And as you drift closer to sleep, I want to thank you for being here, for sharing this quiet journey with me. Every time you listen, every time you breathe in this calm, you bring this channel, Pillow Talk Dreams, to life. You make it more than a story. You make it a sanctuary, a place where hearts can rest. So before you fall asleep completely, I'd like to ask for just one small thing. If this story brought you peace, if it made you feel something gentle inside, please take a moment to subscribe. Not for numbers, not for fame, but so that each night you'll have a place to return to. A voice that waits for you, a story that understands, a space where you can let go of the noise and simply drift. Because here you are never alone. Here you are always safe, always seen, always loved. Now, as the music fades, let your breath slow down even more. In and out, like waves on the lake, feel your body soften, your shoulders relax. The air around you turn warm and quiet. There is no rush, no worry, just this soft silence between heartbeats. And as you float gently towards sleep, carry these words with you. You are enough. You are loved. You are safe. The world outside can wait until morning. Right now, you are home. Good night, my friend. May your dreams be kind. May your heart rest easy. And may peace find you just as the lake found Thomas, quietly, beautifully, forever. Sleep well, and when you wake, may you carry a little piece of this calm with you. Until next time, from Pillow Talk Dreams, I wish you a peaceful heart, a gentle night, and the sweetest dreams. The first snow of winter had just begun to fall when Thomas arrived at the lake. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that wrapped itself around your heart, like an old blanket you forgot you owned. The air smelled of pine and wood smoke. Somewhere far off, a church bell rang once and then faded into the hills. He paused at the top of the path that wound down to the house, his grandfather's old cottage, the one he hadn't seen in 15 years. Its windows glowed faintly with the last breath of daylight, and the lake stretched beyond it like a mirror made of silver. Thomas had not planned to stay long, just long enough to breathe, to think, to remember. The war had taken too much from him, friends, years, and the quiet ease of youth. What it hadn't taken, though, was the memory of her. Her name was Alina. Even now, the sound of it stirred something deep in his chest, not pain, not quite, but the echo of something softer. He stepped closer to the house. The snow creaked beneath his boots. He could see the porch lamp swinging lightly in the breeze, still holding the same glass shade his grandfather had hung there decades ago. The door opened with a sigh, like the house itself was waking from a long sleep. Dust hung in the air, catching the dim light. The faint scent of cedar lingered, the same scent that used to fill his childhood mornings here. Thomas lit a fire, slow and careful. The crackle of the wood filled the silence, and he sat in the old armchair by the window, the one facing the lake. Outside, the water was still. He remembered sitting by that same window as a boy, watching rain ripple across the surface. His grandfather would tell him stories about how the lake never forgot what it saw, that it kept every reflection, every whisper, every promise. And that was where it began, the memory of her face on the lake's surface, one summer long ago. He had met Alina by the dock when he was 17. She had come from the nearby village, carrying a basket of apples and wearing a smile that looked like sunlight after rain. He remembered her laughter, light and effortless, and how it made him forget the weight of his own silence. They spent that summer walking the edges of the lake, talking about everything and nothing. She loved the sound of water against wood, and he loved the way she listened as if even silence spoke to her. One evening just before dusk she had said, "Do you think lakes dream?" He had smiled. "If they do, they dream of reflections." She'd laughed softly, brushing her hair from her face, and for a moment he thought time had stopped. But time never stops, it only drifts. And when autumn came, so did the goodbye. Her family moved away, far from the lake, far from him. They wrote letters for a while, but then the letters stopped. He waited by the dock that winter, watching the lake freeze, believing she might one day return. Now, decades later, he was back, an old man, carrying old dreams, sitting in the same chair by the same window. He reached into his coat pocket and took out a small, folded letter, the last one she had sent. The ink was faded, but her words still lived. "If you ever come back to the lake, look for the willow tree. I left something there for you." The willow tree. He remembered it, standing tall on the far edge of the lake, its branches sweeping the water like gentle hands. The fire popped softly. Outside, snow thickened, the world turning quiet again. And Thomas, with the letter resting in his palm, knew he would go there tomorrow. He closed his eyes, and the sound of the crackling fire merged with the slow rhythm of the lake beyond the window, steady, soothing, eternal. The past was calling him home. Morning came softly, like a whisper through the curtains. The snow had settled over the world, turning the hills into folds of white silk. The lake lay still, holding the reflection of a pale winter sun. Thomas rose slowly, his body heavy with age, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He brewed tea on the old iron stove, the smell of it mingling with the scent of pine wood and smoke. As he sat at the table, his gaze wandered to the letter again, that small, fragile bridge between then and now. "If you ever come back to the lake, look for the willow tree." Her words repeated in his mind like a song that never ended. After a long sip of tea, he put on his old wool coat, wrapped a scarf around his neck, and stepped outside. The air bit gently at his skin, crisp and pure. The snow crunched beneath his boots as he followed the narrow path leading down to the water. Every sound was soft, the distant call of a bird, the creak of the trees, the faint hum of wind brushing across the frozen lake. It felt as though the world was holding its breath. He passed the dock, its wooden planks dusted white, and followed the shoreline. The lake stretched wide and endless, its frozen surface glinting under the morning light. And then he saw it, the willow tree. Even after all these years, it stood tall and patient, its long branches frozen in elegant arcs, reaching down to touch the snow. Thomas stopped, his heart caught between memory and silence. This was where they had said goodbye. He could almost see her there again, her red scarf fluttering in the wind, her eyes soft, her hands trembling as she promised to write. He walked closer, each step a slow echo of his youth. Beneath the tree, he brushed away a layer of snow with his gloved hand and saw the earth still firm, still familiar. He knelt. The cold stung his fingers as he began to dig gently, searching not for treasure but for truth. Then his hand touched something hard, wood, a small box. He lifted it out, brushing the snow from its surface. The lid was carved with a tiny pattern of leaves, simple, delicate. He opened it slowly. Inside lay a folded piece of paper, a pressed wildflower, faded but still beautiful, and a small silver locket. His breath caught. He remembered the locket. He had given it to her one summer evening as they sat by the water, telling her it would keep their memories safe. He opened it. Inside was a tiny sketch of him, drawn by her hand. His younger face, eyes full of hope, and a faint smile she had always teased him about. Beneath the locket, he unfolded the note. The ink was light but still legible. If you're reading this, it means life brought you back to the place we both loved. I don't know if the world will ever let us meet again, but I hope this lake keeps our memories safe. The laughter, the promises, the quiet moments that belonged only to us. If you ever feel alone, remember, love does not end, it only changes form. The lake remembers everything. Thomas sat still, tears tracing quiet paths down his cheeks. The wind stirred the branches above, making them whisper like voices of the past. He closed the box gently, pressing it to his chest. For the first time in years, he didn't feel empty. He felt full, full of memories, of peace, of something that felt like forgiveness. He looked out across the lake, now glowing with pale light, and for a moment he thought he saw her reflection, young, smiling, standing beside him once more. He whispered softly, "Thank you, Alina. I found you again." The words drifted into the cold air, carried by the wind toward the horizon. The willow tree stood silent but alive, its branches swaying gently as if nodding in understanding. Thomas stayed there for a long while, until the sun began to sink and shadows stretched long across the snow. Then he turned back toward the house, carrying the little box in his hands like something sacred. When he reached the porch, he looked back one last time, the willow, the lake, the place where time had folded back upon itself. And though he walked slowly, his heart walked lightly. The fire was still glowing when Thomas returned. He placed the wooden box gently on the table beside the lamp, as though afraid it might vanish if he looked away. The locket lay open, the tiny sketch watching him with eyes that had once been his own. He stared at it for a long time, not out of sadness, but something deeper, something tender. Outside, the snow fell again, slow and soft, like a lullaby written by the sky. He poured himself another cup of tea and settled into the armchair by the window. The lake shimmered faintly beneath the moonlight, and somewhere in the quiet, he thought he could almost hear her laugh, light, distant, and familiar. For a while, he let the silence speak.